Animal City, a space of learning, interacting, and welfare for animals and humans. The thesis started with the idea of looking at cities and various institutions built for animals around them. While the animal density in cities is lower than in the original habitats that were replaced by cities, cities still provide an important habitat for a large number of animals. These animals are generally treated as nuisances or problems to the urban infrastructure and are thus not even considered in the planning process, which in the end creates a human centered planning. The argument focuses on reimagining the designing process and provides a few ways in which the interests of animals can be integrated into it. The thesis gets divided into four parts: synopsis, site study, design, ARD. Synopsis: Mumbai is a home for a lot of animals, some of which we see on a day to day basis. The thesis started with observing these animals and the institutions or spaces they inhabit. In order to understand the complexities of the interaction of animals and humans in a dense fabric like Mumbai, a few site visits were done across the city. This helped in understanding how each animal is treated. It looks into the various forms of interaction that currently takes place in the city of Mumbai and its effect on both animals and humans. Though some sites were planned well when it comes to the human interface of it, but there was a distinct lack of understanding when it comes to the behavioral patterns, social or spatial patterns of these animals. For example, let's consider a dog slide zone, which is basically its personal zone to be approximately 2 square meters. So ideally an enclosure for 10 dogs has to be at least 20 square meter excluding the separate area for sleeping. But instead they are put in places which are less than 10 square meter, and as dogs are pack animals and are separated from their pack, to be kept with other dogs in such compact spaces leads to fights between them, leading to injuries or sometimes even death. Also, animals with totally different habitats are expected to survive in similar enclosures in most of these species. In order to understand these aspects in detail, two of the animals with the largest stray population in the city were chosen to study, which are the dogs and the dry cattle. This slide describes the life cycle of a cow in Mumbai, which till it becomes dry is an essential animal as it gives milk and is a major part of the dairy industry. They were sold to slaughterhouses till 2015, after which, because of the beef ban in Mumbai, they were either sold in black or were left on the street. This looks into the life cycle of a dog in Mumbai. Stray dog population in Mumbai is approximately 90,000, which is the highest among all stray animals. Because of overpopulation, schemes to serialize stray dogs has become a priority and are handled by 5 different NGOs which are in tie-up with the BMC. The project looks into designing spaces for animals and also allows a certain window of interaction between humans and animals. The programs thus gets divided into two main categories: the human functions and the animal functions. The animal functions provides housing for these stray animals and the human function supports the animal functions as veterinary facility which also allows learning opportunities for students. Housing an animal in partial confinement rather than letting them roam freely modifies its behavior, thereby affecting the animal's health and comfort. An understanding of animal psychology combined with well designed facilities has the capacity to reduce stress on the animal, consequently enhancing health and comfort. Facilities must be appropriate for the species, anticipated number of animals, and the expected length of stay in order to ensure physical and psychological well being of the animals. Animal study. If a housing system for animals is to be successful, it must provide for the spatial and behavioral needs of the animal. To achieve this, it is important to understand how an animal behaves while performing routine activities such as drinking, feeding, lying, or walking, sleeping, or lying. For cows, the preferred surface is sand as it provides the required traction and support to the cow, particularly old cows. And because of the lying down movement in which they bend forward, which leads to their knees hitting the ground first with all of its body weight, thus a softer surface is preferable since it reduces the risk of injuries. Dogs prefer walking in tight circles, stomping the sleeping area with their paws, or dig before circling over the area and lying down. So, muddy soil serves as a best sleeping or lying bedding area for dogs. In order to understand the rough sizes of these animals' lying areas, four of the most common sleeping positions were examined and maximum spaces taken into account as their individual sleeping areas, which are 7 meters square for cows and 3.5 meters square for dogs. Walking areas. Cows prefer walking outdoors on muddy surfaces filled with layers of grass. A cleaner surface like concrete or soft rubber flooring is preferred when it comes to indoors as it helps them to clean off their feet according to their body dimensions, the indoor walkway should be at least 1.5 meters in width. For dogs, as they spend most of their times outdoor, minimum space is required for walking indoors, since it will just be used to take out the extra mud in their paws or lice or insects from their body. Eating spaces. Covered portion offers stall feeding for cows, which is generally made of concrete, and the dimensions of the feedmonger allows cows to get into their natural eating posture. The size allows the front face to be approximately 150 mm with a width of 500 mm. Dogs, being pack animals, can't have a common or a concrete feeding area, thus have to be manually fed using feeding balls. Drinking. Flowing water as a source of drinking water supply is preferred as it calms the cow down, and they generally drink after eating to digest the food easily. So the water could be allowed to flow after their eating time is done. For 100 cows, a tank of 6000 mm by 7500 mm is sufficient. For dogs, the same system as feeding is applied. Defecation. The cow generally defecates after eating. This determines the position of the gutter running parallel to the feedmonger with the slope of 1 is to 100, which allows the free flow of liquid excreta. The gutter has to be at least 300 mm. For dogs, because of the consistency of their feces, have to be picked up manually. Flight zone. The flight zone is the distance within which a person or another animal can approach an animal before it moves away. For cows, because of their 270-degree vision, their flight zone runs along their sides and narrows down their blind spot. Though maximum cows in the project will be dry cows who have been dairy cows at one point or another, making them used to human beings being around reduces their flight zone. For dogs, the flight zone is a very critical as it gets divided into three layers. The outermost layer is the home range. This area may be shared with other members of the pack. In the wild, this would be the outer hunting limits. In our modern dog society, it might be just few doors away or several blocks. Then comes the intimate zones, which are the extended personal areas. Only juveniles and other members of the pack can enter this area. Critical areas are the inner personal zones. Penetration of this area usually leads to fight response. Fencing systems. For cows, barbed wire is most commonly used fencing system. 5 strands are recommended with a total height of 1200 mm. For dogs, a cross-wired fence is the ideal barrier because of their flexibility. Its height has to be approximately 1.5 meter because of their high jumping range. The diagrams here show the various activities each animal does on a daily basis and their time devoted to it. Cow, because of its self-weight, prefers to rest most of the time as dry cows are generally old, their body movements are restricted. Thus, they require a larger resting zone which is adequately shaded, be it natural or man-made. Whereas dogs, because of their athletic build, spend most of their time walking or playing, thus require a larger open area. These are the prototypes developed from the above animal study. For healthy cows, two prototypes were developed that are the one sided and the two sided feeding systems. Whereas cows with diseases have to be separated from the herd, thus, an isolation ward is required, which also becomes a recovery ward after their treatment, as they can be examined easily and their diseases don't spread. For dogs, the prototypes involves a free roaming canal, an isolation ward, and a recovery ward where the dog is not completely healed but it doesn't carry a contagious disease, for example, a small injury. But the bedding for the sleeping area is soft rubber flooring as it allows the space to be cleaned easily and doesn't allow mud to get into their wounds. In order to understand the arrangement and spatial requirements of the veterinary facility, a small study of the rooms, medical equipments, and connectivity between different programs was done. Also, the dimensions of particular rooms for a particular n number of patients were taken into consideration, which involved the individual spaces of each patient. For example, the examination room requires an examination table, a wash basin to clean up after the treatment, a supply cabinet, etc. And it also requires a separate entry for doctors and a separate one for patients. By using the above study, clusters of programs were made, which allows the smooth functioning of a space. Site study. Since the project tries to build a relation between animals and humans, the design intervenes as an extension to an already existing veterinary school, the Bombay Veterinary College of Mumbai. Bombay Veterinary College is located in Goregaon East in the PS ward. It is a government college and covers a total land area of 35 acres. which serves as a perfect spot for animals requiring a larger open space. As it houses animals, it provides a learning opportunity for the veterinary students itself from the college. The site lies along the Western Express Highway, touching the RA Milk Colony on the east side. The Veterinary College building is a series of blocks connected by a central spine, which is a corridor that ends at the OPD. The campus also includes PGs for students. This 3D of the site just shows the overall fabric of the site and the activities around it. These were few diagrams to show the evolution of the design on site. The area between the college and the PGs was a perfect spot for the intervention, as it has the least amount of human intervention. Also, the corridor of the college opens up to this landscape. The site for cows and dogs were divided along the already existing pathway, with the area of cows already aligning with the existing cowshed. This shows the cutout land for the shaded areas for animals. The layer of existing trees was put to cut out the shaded areas, and finally, the clusters of veterinary programs were put along the existing pathway that leads to the Gaushala. This shows the new pathway starting from the end of the existing college corridor, dividing the land into different paddocks and zones, and serving as the connection between all these areas. The final site plan shows the various textures of land from high length grass to low length used according to the animal's preference. Design Plans. This plan is cut along the 3-meter level contour. At the entrance of the college corridor lies the two-way feeding cowshed for with two resting zones, one facing outside which is lightly shaded and the other one running along the retaining wall which is completely shaded. It also has a water channel running along its fence. The programs run along the pathway. Here is the TVCC center, which on the ground floor has the large animal treatment area in the center, and it along its corridor are the programs like the laboratory, the staff room, the scrub up room, and the laundry room, which are used by doctors after the treatment. It has a separate staircase for students that leads up to the upper weaving deck, so as to not disturb the treatment going on the lower floor. It also has a storage for fodder and resting areas for the workers. Besides the TVCC center in the isolation ward for the cows, which makes it easier to bring the cow here after its treatment, and the one-way feeding shed on the south side with the resting area running along its retaining wall. The 6-meter level contour houses the last paddock with the two-way feeding system. On the lower side, we have the second TVCC centers with programs like the briefing room, office, and storage for the students and their lab equipments. The veterinary building can be entered at 7.5-meter level with programs like reception, business office, and admin office on the left of the courtyard. Generally, an appointment is taken from the reception and then the patient has to go to the examination room or the small animal treatment area depending on their case, which lie on the right side of the corridor with a separate entry for doctors to enter from the staff room, with the central area being used as an open seating area. As you move along the central spine of the building, the second courtyard steps down and opens up the small animal treatment area, where the small animals like dogs and cats are treated in feeding booths, which internally leads to the X ray room, with internal access only to staff members to the laboratory. To its left opens up the another courtyard, which is the preparation, the surgery room, and the dog internal recovery ward, which can be accessed and seen from the preparation room itself so as to observe the healing animals. Here is the large courtyard with the amphitheater being used as a seating space for the canteen. Here are the three types of dog kennels. One being the isolation ward with spot treatment. Here the animal is kept till it's non-contagious and healthy enough to move to the recovery ward. Then we have the recovery ward and then the free roaming canal. Two of the dogs free roaming canals with resting areas along the retaining wall and playing area on the adjacent side. The last dog kennels are reserved for old dogs with a fence separating them from the puppy ward. Depending on their daily activities, the areas of both the spaces vary. Sections. These are few of the sections cut across the building. Section AA. The first part of the section shows the TVCC center with the weaving deck which allows the students to view the treatment without disrupting the space. The building has a wider build form which allows the cow to be comfortable as it is separated from the herd and brought indoors. Lot of humans around. A compact or smaller space would cause panic for the cow. Outside the TVCC center is the isolation ward for the cow where it's brought after treatment. This shows the two-way feeding system cut along its cross section. The second part, this is the small animal treatment area of the veterinary facility with the partition wall serving as the divide between the dog and cat treatment booths. This shows the free roaming dog canals with the mud pit which serves as a resting area along its retaining wall. Section BB. Section BB is cut across the dog recovery ward. Here is a laboratory which then steps down to the lower courtyard which has the preparation room. This is the paddock 3 cowshed with the isolation ward on the right. Section CC. This shows the cross section of both the paddocks 1 and 2 together. Lower one being the two-way feeding system and the one-way on top, with the second TVC center besides it. This shows the first courtyard as we enter the veterinary hospital, cut across the examination room and the business office. Section DD. Section DD is cut across all the dog canals, with the lower ones being the two free roaming dog canals and the puppy ward on top. These are few views across the building to get a better spatial understanding of the design. ARD. This last part talks about the construction and technological aspect of the building. These few slides show the phase-wise construction from digging in and constructing the retaining walls to constructing the roof. When it comes to materiality and construction, the roof is a green roof trying to merge with the existing landscape, with the RCC retaining wall on the right, cladded with brick tiles. The roof slab is constructed out of the three-layered reinforced brick tiles, and the exterior walls are made out of brick. This shows the reinforcement details for the roof slab, and this the various layers used to construct a green roof. This shows the various materials and spatial dimensions taken into consideration for the one-way feeding system for cows, with the foundation detail for the same. This slide talks about the various quantities required for running all the paddocks with its maximum intake population. This shows the various zone for dogs and their population according to the health condition and age. The further slides show the layout of different systems taken into consideration for the design, from drainage for animals to water requirements for cows, etc. Drainage system for animal layout plan. It shows how the cow dung is taken from individual pits to the main pit from where it's taken to the biogas plant. Drinking water system for cows layout plan. It shows how each paddock is supplied with enough drinking water. Water system layout, drainage system layout, stormwater treatment layout, HVAC system layout which is mainly used in the veterinary hospital and the TVCC center. This shows the vehicular movement on the site. In order to explore and develop on the farm, different materials such as clay, wireframe, file card were used to model the building. This shows the final panel. Thank you.